Hi, Amy. I am excited to talk to you today about rare relationships. I believe you are a person with a rare relationship, and I wanted to interview you about that today, and you agreed to come on and talk about it. First of all, do you want to tell everybody who you are and how we're connected and what you do?
Thank you for having me. Christine, I love talking about this stuff. My name is Amy Frankel. We met through the School of Embodied Arts Feminine Embodiment Coaching Certification Program. So we are both feminine embodiment coaches. I'm also a rites of passage facilitator. I do maiden to mother work, which has been really interesting as well. I do some consulting work. I'm in healthcare consulting, so I have a master of public health. So I do a lot of work in social determinants of health and population health, which weaves into this work. So my husband, I'll tell you a little bit. We have a very, very long history. We met 18 years ago.
Okay.
And yeah, we
Wait,
got
how,
married.
Amy, how old were you when you met?
Yeah. 26.
Okay.
We were kids.
And
We were
he's the same age as you.
He's just 6 months younger than I am.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've been married 8 years. So
Wow.
the 10 years
Huh.
between, it has been a roller coaster ride of rom-com, drom-com, wild, wild ups and downs. Yeah. Yeah. And early when we were kids, I think we both painfully recognized that we were bonded through our past experiences, past traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
But we come with a long personal history of trauma, and we also come with that relationship history that we had previously that had a lot of wounds to that. So there was a lot of space. We took a lot of space.
So you had breakups in the 10
Many.
years. Many. Like how many?
Mm. I mean, like five, and they were very, very dramatic
Okay.
and very, very intense.
And during those times, did you both date other people during the
Yes.
breakups? Yes. Okay. So you had 10 years where you had other dating experiences, where you had these big breakups. Okay.
Yeah, many other dating experiences. And I will say, I have been a serial monogamist
Okay.
for my whole life, where my comfort zone, my comfort was in being in relationships
Yeah.
with serving men. There's a lot to unpack there. And our culture also teaches us a lot about what a woman's role is supposed to be.
A lot. Yeah. Yeah.
Be pretty all the time, smile all the time. Your emotions are ugly.
Yeah.
There's no space for your rage. You're crazy. I mean, you have to be pretty and you have to serve.
Yeah.
And
Work hard and do it looking
you
good.
got to do all the things.
Yeah.
You got to do all the things. And it's interesting for especially for our age group. And when you look at just this generation of women coming out of the feminist movement, where there's this have it all. You can
Yeah.
have it all. It's like,
No.
what? Sure, you can maybe have it all. It's gonna cost you your life and vitality, and you're gonna burn out. But sure, go have at it. So we grew up with that. That's in our body. Like
Yeah.
that's like really ingrained in our belief system, is that in order to be a woman, to be worthy as a woman, I got to be able to do all the things and do them well and operate at 100% all the time. So I was very much stuck in that, like so many of us are.
Yeah.
I was taught by my father that a woman is supposed to serve. I'm in this role. So that's why it's like relationship after relationship after relationship at the same time. Okay, well, I've got to do this career thing. I'm going to get my master's and I'm going to go, do all of the things and just take on. So through that whole thing, I mean, my gosh, 20s, 30s, had absolutely no understanding of myself, what I wanted, who I wanted to rise up to be, and just how I wanted to show up in the world because of the weight of all of these expectations. So, yeah, I sat in relationships that were not right for me. I allowed, right, like during that time when my husband and I, we had that long space apart from one another, where it's, so I'm going from relationship after relationship after relationship, just kind of like serving, trying to be the best girlfriend, trying to, do all the things that society tells me I'm supposed to do. Meanwhile, there's an inner me that's freaking raging
Right.
because I'm not in touch, with her. So yeah, that was, I've
Tell
been
me,
that
like, can you give me like a specific example of what that really looked like? Like one specific example of a relationship that was like really not right for you, but you were just trying to kind of mold yourself until I can be anything that this man needs. I can, shift into what he wants. Yeah, that's my relationship history is it's like I would ruin relationships. I would destroy the polarity, the difference, the contrast by evaluating what the man needed and like morphing myself into that. And so I destroyed the container essentially by my orientation towards him. And so can you give us a specific instance of one of these relationships where you just,
shape shifting, constant shape
yeah.
shifting for others. For the last, I want to say we were around 30, 31. My now husband and I had reconnected again for a couple of months. And we were living in New York City. I could see it. We're on 8th Street. We had just gotten sushi. And I came in a little hot. I'm like,
I like
this
that.
time, right? This is it. We're gonna get married this time, right? This has got to be it. We're in our 30s now, y'all. What are we doing? That did not go over well, like at all.
Yeah,
So
like it all. Yeah.
it wasn't, like coming in a little hot with someone that anyway. So we had this one of those dramatic, rom-com, like drom-com kind of moments in the middle of the street. And it was like screaming at each other. We went in separate directions. 5 years went by. That was
5
it.
years.
So because a couple of months after that, because again, I'm a serial monogamist, I will find another person to fill that space with. I met someone at the gym and he worked in the restaurant business. And you work in the restaurant business in New York City, a lot of times there's going to be drugs. There's going to be drugs. There's going to be a lot of alcohol, drug abuse.
Yes.
And I just sort of fell into it. I was like, okay, I guess I'll do this now because apparently I didn't have enough of that in my 20s. Let me go back and into party mode
Right.
and hang out at a restaurant bar all night and just, watch him bartend and do this flirt and be all over here and waiting for him. And then it's like the bar closes and I'm still waiting for him. I couldn't get myself out of it. I kept accepting.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where I'm at now. I really want to be sleeping. And I had a great apartment in Soho. It was great. But here I am in this random ass place in Brooklyn, laying in this bed, and I will say it's like he was a model also.
Okay.
But this was like he shared an apartment. I mean, and we were older. Like he was 11 years older than me.
Oh my gosh.
So, and he's sharing an apartment. He had a room in this apartment with all, these other people. And I'm like, sure, yeah, this is cool. But
This is cool. We're cool.
I guess, like he's pretty cute and sexy. Sure. Okay. Let me just deal with this. I remember this like within 3 months of dating. And this was good on his part, of course. We went out to dinner and he told me that he was still married. He was working on separating. And it was like, even though I can look back on it now, especially after really doing this embodiment work, you go back, especially turning, in your mid 40s, you start to go back. Yeah, I can go back to that place and see, darn it, I had signs in my body. I knew
that it was enough.
Yeah. And I just was like, okay, let me help you through that because I'm here to serve you. So let me shepherd you through your separation from your wife of all these years and it's like, I knew it then, did not have the courage to listen.
Yeah, and when I'm hearing that, right? Because I coach women around men with embodiment, and then when I'm listening to that, I'm like, oh wow, every single thing he needed, you just changed yourself into what you perceived he needed, which usually ruins the relationship container at some point, because probably what he needed was, we need to take a break because I'm not dating anyone who's married, and I'm not sleeping here because my apartment's nicer. And then you're lifting the relationship container. But it just sounds like you sort of puddled into like, oh, he needs someone to support him. And I think he wants me just to wait for him after work. Right. I've even saw it with myself after I got divorced. I saw myself like, I was old enough to be like, what are you doing? But if I would date someone who was a little more conservative, my clothes would be more conservative. I date someone who's like free, hippie, like I'm all of a sudden I'm wearing like tank tops with no bra all the time. And I'm so chill. And I was like, wow, that orientation towards wanting to be in the same energy of your partner, which is so bad for the relationship and so bad
Mhm.
for a man, if that's who you date. It's something old in your female body to feel like that's expected, even if they aren't asking for that. I watched myself do it. I watched myself like giving that to men who they didn't even want it. They liked who they met.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds like, yes, it's like a very hard core example of that, of like, wow, I even started doing drugs again. What am I doing?
Just
Yeah.
accepted, yeah, and exactly doing that shape shifting because we feel that we have to. There's a
Yeah.
part of us that feels that we have to, but I mean, there's so much rich history there when you look at men and women, and
Yes.
right, because men nor women have really benefited from our culture in a lot of ways,
Right.
right? Exactly what you just said. Like even like men are also, they need a lot of embodiment work. Where
They
like it's like
do. They do. And they don't even want some of this. Some of what's happening when I work with a woman, I'm like, I promise you, your male partner, he does not, he didn't share that problem with you and then want you to go into mom mode. He didn't even invite you there. He needs to solve his own problems. You need to believe he can solve them. But that's very patriarchal, right? It's like old orientations towards relationships.
yeah,
And
and it's
sometimes you just do it.
yeah, and that was one of the many reasons. But when my husband's name is David,
Okay.
our breakups centered around that in some ways, right? He's a salsa musician. And so this is another good example where it's like, I really tried to get into that. And now we can talk about it much more openly, but that was not what he needed from me. He
Right.
needed the honest person. And it was like this, well, who are you? Like, I don't want you to be a mystery and just, kind of follow what it is that I do. I want to know who you are. I want you to be who you are. Yeah, I mean, they're exactly right. Like they don't ask for us to shape shift like that. They don't ask for us to come in and mother them. And
No.
certainly they do. And that's
Certainly
another
they kind of accept it. I mean,
sure.
men can be kind of spongy and disembodied. They don't have as much support. They're expected to like grind out work. They have their whole own set of things, right? But they can be kind of spongy. And I have found it to be true that most of the time the woman sets the tone for the dynamic. So they'll kind of accept, right? Like, oh, well, you're into salsa now. Okay. Right. Right.
Yeah,
Like you're gonna be salsa girlfriend. Like
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but that's, it's interesting because that's also, I think, gets into what conditioning exists within
yes.
men, right? Because they're taught that women are beneath you. So when a woman comes in and just naturally takes on that role, then there's a sense of, okay, I guess this makes sense.
Eventually this will destroy things.
Yeah.
But so it sounds like this is what I'm hearing you say, that over those 10 years, you, as you grew up and as you like went on your own journey, you kind of showed up to each reuniting a little different. For you were like, I'm gonna try to get really into salsa. And then another time you're like, I'm 30, I'm ready to get married. To the end of the 10 years. How did you show up differently the time it worked?
Yeah. So I had it was a breakdown. It was a total mental break. I could no longer handle the mental and physical load of all the things. And, living in New York City, I was working in the fashion industry, and I had gotten to the point where, I was physically sick for years. So I left my apartment. I left it furnished. My friends had to deal with it. I just left everything and started couch surfing, and I traveled and lived out of a backpack for almost about a year and a half. Anyway, so there's this whole journey that I was so blessed to be able to do.
Yeah, it
Um,
sounds like it, right? It sounds like kind of, yeah, a rare experience.
it raw 100%. I recognize it. But the catalyst was, a place that I think a lot of women inevitably, unfortunately, get to, where there's this absolute burnout
Yeah.
of all things, and I was no longer functioning. So I had a lot of time, and there was some real solitude. And I think, coming from that place of I have to be a serial monogamist and serve men, right?
Yeah.
And the way that I had to break from that is to pack a backpack and go across the world and be in absolute solitude. Of course, there's a love story that there as well in the trip, because why wouldn't there?
Well, there's always like men are great teachers.
That's the thing too, that I think is such a good point, is that I think we often have a hard time accepting, is that sometimes relationships have a definitive end date,
Yeah.
and they're meant to hold a very finite amount of space, and then it needs to be let go. Otherwise, the
Yes.
beauty will be sucked away from that.
Yes, you will hate them. It will yeah, it will just like degrade.
Yes. And I think that is such a tender kind of thing to process, when
Yes.
you have these relationships that you feel passion, you feel connection, you feel all these things, but then it's like sometimes you have to come to terms with the fact that this is all it's meant to be, and you have to let it go.
That's so hard because that person in you that wants to be the helper, she's also like, I believe in my man. But I actually, what I think is true from coaching and watching women like get really cultivate what I regard as a rare relationship with a man is that the more willingness you have to be like, hands off that lover mode. Like I have no control over the timeline of this. I have no control over if this person's ready to meet me where I'm ready to meet them. And I'm just going to breathe. And if it goes, it goes. Then that is usually, if you get to that place, is usually where you're finally ready to be in relationship with a man in a way that is embodied, grounded. You're like, I'm not calling for the ring anymore. I just actually want to be authentic to myself and honor this container. As soon as you get there, I feel like that's really the ticket to the rare relationship.
It's so fun. Yeah. Because that's it. So when David and I finally reconnected, there was all this space and time and distance and real solitude for me. And that's exactly what it is. We reconnected. There was this just openness to it, where I was like, I'm not going to try to manipulate. I'm going to be as authentic as my capacity had, allowed at that point.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's always a journey, right?
Yeah, it's always a journey. Yeah.
There's always more to, uncover. But at that point in my life, it was like, I cannot control this. What I can control is how I'm going to show up, and how I can either be responsive or reactive, right? So the reactive part of me being, if like he say something the wrong way, and again, going back to him, well, you're this, you're da, 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 right? Responsive is really tending to making sure that I'm checking in with my needs and the things that, again, that I believe that I wanted at the time, and
Right.
making sure that process is incorporated in it, rather than it all being about what I believed his needs to be and how I'm going to serve. I had to come to that place with this sense of I'm just going to keep checking in with myself. Is how this is progressing, is it aligning with what it is that I want and what it is that I need? And there's this real flow and ease. Like,
Yeah.
when you get to that place, and he surprised me with a trip to Niagara Falls. I had like no expectation, no manipulation. There was no, I didn't have an agenda. I just was present with myself and the time and space that we were at. And he ended up proposing.
Okay, so here's an interesting question about the storyline. Is like you kind of went on this like what I would describe as a very female single woman journey, right? And
Totally.
most women don't get this. I have undertaken it, but not till my late 30s, right? And so you had this whole like eat, pray, love thing that you closed it with. But you also, you like dated the bartender who's like had a drug problem, and you have all these different jobs, and you sought traditional career and non-traditional career, and you really, really explored yourself, found yourself, did all kinds of different therapy, right? You went on the journey that I hope my daughters go on. Yeah. I want to like date the wrong guy, chase the man to Spain, and throw yourself at him so that you can be standing there crying, being like, why are you crying over this man with no bed sheets in the middle of Europe?
Yeah, bare mattress.
But all those things that you really can't control about your feminine conditioning, right? That they start to leave your body. And I'm sure for our daughters, that will be easier than it was for us, because they already have role models for that. Both of us are giving our children this story. But so all that to say, you had like this huge change, and the relationship sounds to me like it worked when you got in the right orientation to it, when you grew to the place where you could orient to it. What about him? Did he go on some massive eat, pray, love embodiment journey, or was it a lot of your change that made it work?
He went through his own journey, really.
His own journey. Okay.
So he's a creative, like I mentioned, he's a salsa musician. But prior to that, when we were younger, you're in this, you gotta go to college, go get the degree, and then go get the job. And he was in that traditional professional kind of career. And we had that long stretch of time off. He stopped doing the traditional work, and that's when he really dove into his music career, right? He taught himself all of these instruments, and he composed all this music, created a real band. They released albums, and he was out there pursuing that and really experiencing what it would be like for him to be a musician. So that was definitely part of it. And we look back on that, and if we had stayed together like and stayed within the grips of each other, he wouldn't have done that. I mean, he wouldn't have done that. And I've always wanted to travel, and I wouldn't have done that either. I want to kind of really underscore that it's like the level of sort of spirituality and self-growth, right? Again, it aligns with your capacity at the time. So I did what I could do from a spiritual and personal growth kind of perspective during that phase in my life, up to my capacity. Right now it's opening, more and more and more. I think, one of the challenges now, I mean, there's so many challenges in relationships. It's so messy.
It's so human, right? You and I were talking about, like, before we got on this call, I handled something with my teenager on her phone, and then I stepped in my cat's vomit. And you were like, I unclogged the toilet.
I mean, this is a good point, I think. My husband there's no other person in my life that ever compared to him. Like, he was always going to be my guy, right? Since I met him. And, like there's nobody else for me. It doesn't matter. You could put anybody in front of me and it's going to always be my husband. But even still, with that, it's still messy, and it still gets ugly, and we still lack the passion sometimes. Like,
it's not always hot all the time.
Like, God, no, right? No. So it's not. It's really, 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 really not. And it's always how I show up.
A lot of clients will come to me, should I stay or should I go? Right? My husband should I stay or should I go with him? And I'm like, well, first we're going to do this amount of work just on yourself, some embodiment work, and you're going to stay. And then at the end, though, you're going to get to where what you're talking about, which is kind of hard, which is like, I expect arguments because arguments are part of communication. And so I expect like mad, grumpy, whatever is part of a human. So we have to like reset all that. But then you can get to where you're like, wow, this person completely dysregulates me. Like even on paper, they checked all the little boxes on the spreadsheet I put of the man I wanted. They just dysregulate me. When they tell a story about their ex, I feel like my whole chest lights up. I can't come off of an argument. I don't seem to be able to let things go with this guy. That to me is like how you decide the always like the stay or go thing is who am I in this relationship container? What does it do for me, right? And I think like what you really said that's like the so valuable though, and that I think actually is very sad for women to accept this. But if they do accept it, it's whoa. It's like the world opens. It's like there's death in relationships, right? Like who you were when you met your husband, who you were before you were like your husband had to get to know you after you became a mother, right?
Oh
Like
God.
God, oh God, yeah, God. You're like,
Don't start with the M word.
yeah,
Road.
there's like constant death and rebirth. And so it also sounds like he's the kind of man because he's gone through deaths and rebirths in his own individual life experience that he can reorient to all the new people that you're going to be bringing like into this like, hey, I changed again. Like
Yeah. And something you were mentioning before, you said a spreadsheet. And I think it's good to, but in embodiment work, these are not cognitive exercises. And I think this is, again, the culture that we are trying to keep up with values the logical, the linear, that right. So we stay in the headspace a lot, and you can't navigate relationships that way. Like you can't,
no.
you have to get into the feeling of it because you sit in the mind all the time. Your brain is trained to seek out threats and
Right.
try, right, like, so it's always going to be the other person is coming at me. If it's a cognitive exercise, that's why it's like the embodiment is so valuable. But yes, hard like this
It's
is not.
hard. Yeah, it's hard to accept. It's hard to accept. You can get married and you can say you think you know what things will be like with your spouse when they age and you have kids. But sometimes, right, the relationship doesn't survive those transitions.
Right.
Like your partner goes through a time where it's so long where life just ate his lunch and he cannot show up for anyone. And he passes your capacity to be with him in that space. And the relationship doesn't make it. And so this is what I would identify as like the rare qualities, right? Is you finally got to a place where you could just be like, you know what? I love you and I want to spend time with you and I don't have a lot of expectations beyond that. That created safety for him. And then I think you also have to just hold that resonance of like, today I show up to this all I can. I believe deeply that we are connected and that this is an important relationship. So I'm going to show up to it. But I also kind of accept that I have no control over the future or what these deaths and rebirths will bring for both of us.
Yeah. And there's a recognition and living by the fact that the relationship can't heal whatever your wounds are, and your partner cannot heal whatever your wounds are. Because you're in a relationship, you cannot skirt the responsibility of tending to yourself, tending to your wounds, establishing your own boundaries, and really learning and honoring how you want to show up, finding your autonomy. No relationship is going to get you there. No relationship is going to heal you,
Do you ever find yourself feeling resentful of your husband because you've done a lot of work around like me, right? we're off the track of self-care and therapy. And like,
Yeah.
we've like, yeah, this is where most people go and we're on the top of the mountain. Do you ever find yourself feeling resentful or frustrated that you have gone on this very deep self journey to always show up as best you can, right? Which I think as best you can is really messy. You have gone so deep. Do you ever find that has created any resentment in your relationship for you?
Totally.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, I've noticed when I operate from that resentment, that's when I start to, get into that control mode again for him. And it's like, oh, you should go do this and go to this man's retreat. And I want
Yeah.
you to do this.
Yes.
Like, and then I gotta slow my roll. I
I
gotta
guess
slow my roll
so. You're like, yeah, I'm coming
and
in
bring it
hot.
back to, okay, let's first process these sensations of feeling of resentment. What does this feel like for me? And work it through the body, so then I can approach him and talk with him from a place of my strength and autonomy, and not from a place of reactivity. Don't Not reacting to the resentment, right? That's why, is again, that the embodiment work is so helpful, because that's how we can really lean back into our strength and what it is that we really want and what do we really need, and don't react. And I think this is such an important point. Like you mentioned, we've gone down this embodiment and all these things, whatever, but it does not mean that resentment doesn't come up. It doesn't mean that guilt doesn't come up. It doesn't mean that the inner critic, like all of the things will still happen. It's just, you have the tools and capability to respond to yourself and respond to those inner needs before this work of being able to go down into the body and process it. You just go from that place. You just react from that because you're operating from here. Like,
Yeah, and for you it sounded like very like control. I can still, even now, I have to be very careful. I can just pull off. I
yeah,
can
oh,
just be
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
I'm just like a no, right?
Mhm.
Like, you're dead now. You never existed. I'm
Oh,
done with
yeah.
this. And like, cuz so I think that, yeah, it's the same though. Going after your partner and being like, you need to do this and you need to do that, and getting all on top of them. It's the same thing when I'm like, you do whatever you want, right?
Yep.
I'm a no.
Yep.
I'm
Do
a
you?
like,
Yeah, I don't care. Right.
I'm
Yeah,
done
yeah.
with you. Yeah, yeah. I'm like, you're not even in my, I don't even care. Right. And I just drop it, which is so unsafe for anyone on the other side of that. Drop it. So it is like, it is part of my embodiment work for myself to recognize that, like, yeah, that resentment does come up for me. It's not just with men, it can be with friends, with my family. Well, I wish I could talk to you at the level like I can talk to Amy, right? Like, Amy and I can talk about all these things and all these parts of life and all these ways we experience our emotions. And I want to talk to my partner that way. That's not always an option, because most men, that's rarely an option. Most men don't have access. They're not like embodiment coaches that
Yeah.
like are prolific, and men have access to all of these things and it's promoted in their friendship circles, and they do not have these kind of like even
Men need love.
societal,
Men
they,
need a lot.
yeah, no. So yeah, I think all those things are things that the women I work with or that watch my content struggle with. Resentment, feeling like their partner, this is gross, right? It's gross to say this, but I know this comes up for me, feeling like your partner's not at your level
Mhm.
because they haven't done the work you've done.
Yeah, it's not gross. I mean,
Yeah.
it's human. It's
Yeah,
human.
it's just a little bit like, oh, it's like I like through self-work, you've somehow like entered some other echelon,
Right.
and
Oh, I
someone's not at
know.
your level, but it's still, it's hard.
It's so hard. It's so hard. And you saying, like, you kind of do this, "Blah, I'm done." Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I've been there. I've been there,
Yeah.
because that's a safe place. That's you. No, this is safer for me to just find, you go and do you. That's fine.
Yeah, you do you. You alone.
Go ahead.
Go
That's
ahead.
fine. I'm cool over here.
I'm cool.
Like, It's sort of along those lines. One of the biggest challenges and how I've really used the embodiment work in the relationship is processing those feelings before I react from that place, right? First, which has been so helpful, but also finding the safety. Well, first understanding, and then finding the safety and strength to articulate and ask for what I need without trying to manipulate or control the response from him, and allowing him to rise up, giving, right?
Or to
Yeah.
say no.
Or
Or
to
to
say,
say,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Or to say, I don't have the capacity right now. I need some space right now. And that's the dance that he and I do, a lot, because we've got two kids. Like we were talking about before, like we've got two kids. I got a mortgage. We don't have family money. Like we're on our own. We're on our
Right.
flipping own here. So there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of life struggles that come up. So that's the thing. It's about that responsiveness over reactivity. And that's, again, like the embodiment tools to be able to check, where am I? How am I coming into this right now?
Right.
Am I in a place where I can, I have space for him to support him? If not, I have to be able to speak up about that, right? So there's no expectation there. And then on the other hand, like, can I really articulate what I need? I'm not going to play any flipping games. Oh, if I just drop this hint and then maybe he'll pick it up and this, no, I'm going to speak up. I'm going to understand what I need. I'm going to speak up for it. His responsibility is then say, yep, I got you. Or, you know what, we have to come up with another approach here because I'm a little tapped, but I've got some things going on. So let's see how we can support each other equally, right? Because it's going to be like this constant dance of one has more capacity over the other, or you're going to be in this place where nobody's got capacity.
Everyone's like, I'm done.
And then it's like that, in that place, the silence and space between people, which can be hard, is so valuable, where like you check in and say, I can't, you can't. Okay, you know what? We're each going to take a beat and have some space.
I have noticed some qualities that you're talking about, right? That are like patterns. I want to give women listening okay, these are things I could look for. But like a couple of things that you just said, right? Can the man that you're with, can he say no to you? And can you accept his no? If you're like, I really need to spend more time with you right now. And he is like, I can't do that right now. But what I can do is this, or can he say no to you and you can be okay? Right. And is he someone that you can stop manipulating? Did you trust him enough to let him respond how he wants to respond without manipulating him or influencing him in the direction you want? Like, do you respect him? And then I guess really I notice a lot of what you're saying of the like taking space. A lot of my clients that are in really like successful relationships that as long as both of them want it, it will last. I hear a lot of like, well, this morning he was being an asshole, and then I was not, the most flowy version of myself back, and we just didn't talk. The rest, we just took some space. We didn't talk about it. Later, maybe we sent like a text, or when he came home from work, we dropped it. Like we moved on. We took some space from each other. We didn't like have to over work every single interaction that we had because space is safe.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And that's a hard thing that I get. I recognize that. Oh my gosh, that can be a hard place to find safety in.
Yes.
So I think part of that is, like you mentioned, say that, that there's that heated kind of moment, right? I think and again, it keeps going back to that same thing where you need to, that work of embodiment, becoming aware where your responses are, how your body is responding, because that's where the safety and security lies. Again, it's not a cognitive exercise. You can't convince yourself that you're feeling safe, right? So there is often helpful to understand how you're gonna kind of close that, where it's like, okay, whether it's a sentence, I'm gonna take space from you right now. So there's that whatever it is that you need. And that's something that you personally have to figure out in
Yeah.
order to feel safe in, you know what, let's talk about this later. Or, you know, sometimes it can be just a silent, you just take physical space.
Yeah,
Sometimes
you're
you,
just both not, you're like,
yeah,
we are close enough to be like, you're in a bad mood and I'm not going to handle it right. And you
yeah,
get to be in a bad mood sometimes because you're human and you get to be kind of rude sometimes. And I'm not going to get all caught up in this. It's safe for us to just be like,
mhm.
okay.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I think it's so, we're so, like, we can be so reactive, right, in relationships. And again, like, that space can be not, it can feel really unsafe, especially when you're in that moment of tension.
Yes.
But I think it's really good for everyone to know that it's not a switch. Like, you're not immediately going to find safety in the space, right? Like,
Right.
that's the thing. Like, how do you start to kind of titrate? I love that word, titrate, but how do you titrate in, like, okay, when we're in this place of reactivity, recognizing that first and foremost, and then sort of introducing this safe, let's take some space, let's stop talking about it, let's stop going
Yes.
at each other right now. I think it's best for us to just take a little space. Like, how a couple works that in safely and slowly, again, is part of the kind of the dance of the relationship. But I think
Yeah.
it's the important point is to say that it's not going to be an immediate easeful thing to come out of that sort of, like, need to be in an argument to win it, or need to be in an argument, right, to
Yeah. Like
stay.
to, or discharge my energy that wasn't even about
Yes.
you onto you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It can take some practice, some care and practice in order to, right, to get there. It's not a
Especially
quick.
for a woman. I hear women sometimes describe their partner as stonewalling them or
Mm,
as like a narcissist. And I think that what I was hearing sometimes is just he really needed some space. Like he felt so dysregulated, so unsafe. He loves this woman so much. And she floated, maybe I'm gonna be done with this or I'm gonna break up with you, right? She like threw in that little like dagger. He became very dysregulated to where he kind of shut down. And so it's like there's some of this therapy talk, right? Where like if you're not willing to talk to me right now about this, tackle it. You aren't invested. You're stonewalling me. And then that is like to me the space taking where it's like, well, we didn't finish it last night. We went to bed, we hugged each other. Then 2 days later we had to talk over coffee and we didn't settle it. We just decided
yeah.
that's like the hallmark to me of like there's a quality of a rare relationship that I hear over and over and over again. It's
Mhm.
safe to just let your partner not know. It's safe for you to not know, but you have some underlying trust in the connection.
Yeah, 100%. And something that is kind of, it's like frustrating, but it's kind of an honest truth is that, like, I think we mentioned this before, but just to get to the energy, right, of the feminine, because, you know, we're feminine embodiment coaches. What does that even mean, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
What does that even mean?
so just for a second, talk about the energetics of the a balanced feminine and masculine. The feminine, as frustrating as this can be sometimes, the feminine sets the pace.
She
The
does. She
it's the,
does. Yeah.
you've got to set the piece. And the masculine, if you allow, right, you're giving him the direction. Without the direction, you know, he's going to follow your direction is what it is, right? So if you're giving him this, then he's going to be like, oh Jesus, I don't, you know, what am I doing here? I can't, I'm going to retreat, I'm going to, you know, I'm going to fall into my own mechanisms that may not be healthy for myself, for the relationships, because I need my safety here, right?
Right.
So what I've seen in our relationship is the more I do the work and I'm able to really step into that truth of me as sort of this, you know, getting into my feminine energy in this relationship and setting the piece. Like, if I'm coming with some responsiveness and awareness, and I'm coming from it from a sense of ease and real understanding of my boundaries, my needs, and how I can articulate them, then he has this like, oh, I can rise
Right.
up to this, or I can feel safe to say I need a beat, right? But it is what it is. Like, our responsiveness or reactivity in a lot of ways sets the pace and the tone for how that masculine is going to respond.
It is,
It's kind of an annoying thing to accept sometimes. I know.
I know, and I do think some women, when they talk about like feeling like they're carrying all this emotional labor, I think sometimes they're talking about this and they don't exactly know how to describe it. But the feeling that like they puppet the energy of their home, of their children, of even their like family of origin relationships. It's like if I show up like, oh, right, like then everyone seems to feel safe. And if I show up as like, you're going to do this and you're going to do this and this is how this is going to go, then everyone feels afraid. And so you can choose to orient to that however you want. That can feel like you're this magical female goddess, or it can feel like one more thing of like, oh, I have to be the energy leader. And I guess it sometimes feels a little sexist to me to even talk about it, but it is my experience working with women that relate with men romantically, that in general, you are the energetic, kind of like what you were saying, the pace, like you hold the energy container. And especially if you've done more work, you are just more aware, you're more conscious, you have more of a primal relationship with your body, with time, right? Your body is like this living crazy clock, and you know what you have, like women orient to like the future in a different way. You're magical, but there's like some responsibility, I think, in that maybe is unfair, but it seems to be the truth of our time.
No, it's also very powerful.
It's also very powerful if you
It's like, what?
yeah, you can, yes, you can be like, I am a magical goddess. Or
Wow.
wow.
Right. I
Right.
mean, don't even, it's like just cyclical living is to attune to that and bring that into your household and the way that you operate. Like it's about finding, you know, how do you find more ease in that place of that energetic place, right? And this is where, again, like that work of all of the deconditioning, like getting all of this out of your flipping body so you can have that space to really rise up to all of that energetic potential, all of that energetic power.
Yeah, and it's just for yourself, right? If you're not, again, if you pulled it off your partner, so you're not doing it for the man in your life. It's just for yourself. How you respond to conflict is about you. As soon as I changed that, where I was like, how I respond to any man in my life is only me. Like it's all about me and my willingness to go into his karma, or my willingness to hold my own resonance, that is nothing to do with him. It's not for him. It's not for the relationship. Then I think it stops feeling like a burden.
Right.
Right? Where you're just like, this is my one life in this body with these children, with this person, and it's not going to last a long time. And because I'm a living clock, know that. So like every day is just, each opportunity, each conflict, it's just really about me now. It's blown me away. And why I feel passionate about doing these interviews is like, it's blown me away to watch women not change any person in their life. They kept their husband, their kids, essentially, their kids didn't do an embodiment journey. Their mom stayed the same. They kept the same job. And through doing all this work, they reoriented their own energy towards each of those relationships, and no one else changed. Nothing. But they all of a sudden were like, whoa, I have this. I'm cultivating. It's like my husband and I re-met. It's like I just completely, my orientation towards him completely changed, and he flipped. And I'm like, it's because you're a magical goddess, right? Like you are.
It's you're a magical, powerful, wild, radiant woman. Step into that. I mean, it's many, many, many steps. Let me make
stuff. And they're really ugly. They're really crazy.
Yeah. And it's ugly, right? I mean, this is a rebirth. And especially because I know you work with a lot of women in their 40s, like that is an incredibly pivotal time.
Yeah.
It's incredibly potent and pivotal time, but you got to go through the pain and the muck and the darkness that is the part of the death. Like you gotta die into it. You gotta go into the darkness in order to come back up on the other side. And it's gonna be scary. It's gonna be a lot of like, oh wow, look at this, I feel, and then you're gonna come back because all those emotions, all like again, resentment, all of these things, you're not going to become immune to it. It's all about how you are going to respond and rise up.
Yeah, it's not, well, in the beginning, it's not that it's quite the opposite of becoming immune to it. It's like you
Yeah, you
took a
feel, yeah.
soundboard and you like turned up to like a screaming level your emotions. And then you have to learn to like your body has to calm down with them
Yeah.
at the screaming level. And to me, then that's where you start to get some like, oh, I can reorient towards anything, anyone, anytime. But there's a really bad part. There's just that part
Oh,
where it's like I wasn't even aware of resentment before. I was just sort of like doing these passive aggressive things that I wasn't even conscious of. And now I'm like, gross. I'm like, or
yes.
jealousy, right? When
Ah,
jealousy first came into my body, I had suppressed it so hard that like anything that made me a little jealous, like I could not process it. So it was like
mhm,
a year of like learning to hold jealousy.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
now I'm a superhero with that. And I can use it to like make things sexier, right?
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite emotions now. But it was like if it touched my body even for 1 second, I felt like couldn't breathe.
Yeah. 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 It's ugly. It's ugly. And
It's ugly.
it's it's like and me personally, I have personal experience with huddled on the bathroom floor, snot coming out of my every place a snot can come out of, crying, in the dark of that. Like, yes,
Yeah.
this is not, you don't have to be pretty through all this. You've been told your whole life you got to be pretty. Nope. Now it's time to bring out the darkness.
No, and I'll ask you, I have two last questions, and this one relates to what we're talking about right now. So here's my experience with men that is actually shocking to me. I think it's shocking to the men in my life, but I thought, when I was married a long time, and I did a lot of like I read every book on marriage, like I memorized everything the Gottman Institute put out. Towards the end, everything I would say was like when I would just very calculated, right? Like when you do X, this is what I feel Y, and I really need this. I think even I had moved into where sometimes like I recognize when I first started dating, I was doing a few things that I was like trying to set boundaries, but I was actually making threats, right? Like, and when you do X, I feel Y. And if you do X again, I'm going to do this. So, what I've noticed from that time of me trying to be like therapy girlfriend to now is I am like, there's a lot more passion and very few words. It's messy and I'm mad and I'm like far, far more likely to do something like slam a door. But it's so much more effective with men than my like long TED Talks, my like boundaries that were veiled threats, my lectures, my like putting you in your place, telling you exactly, it's just like there's even some humor and like some sexiness instead of being like appalled. Oh my God, why would he ask me that? It's like, what did you ask? you know? And then the man immediately cues from me. He's like, all of a sudden picking up. He's like, what did I ask her that was kind of like misogynistic and rude? right, right. I'm like,
Yeah.
what did you say to me? But so, yeah, can you relate to any of that of like,
Yeah.
this would be more human, more loose?
It's Life isn't meant to be experienced solely on a cognitive level. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And we as women, we've been trying to retrofit ourselves and how we operate into these societal expectations of what we're supposed to be, which is like, again, be pretty, stay, small, and your emotions are, bleh, And once you actually start to own, and your whole body is a communication system, not just
Yes.
up here, not just up here. And this is it. This is all we've been trying to use. And when you start getting into the body and you own that shit, you own
Yeah.
your emotions, you fully own it. Now, be careful with it, of course. Like,
There's like boundaries, right?
it's got to be, again, this is all part of the conscious, because what I'm referring to is like a conscious and safe expression of rage. We
Yes.
don't have to hide this stuff,
Right.
right? We don't have to hide it. And when
Right.
we own it and we come from that place of autonomy, security, safety, and owning and expressing those emotions, yeah, the guys, oh, this is refreshing. Like, I'm getting
Yeah.
some real shit out of this woman. Okay, great. Like,
She's real, and she didn't lecture me or anything, because this is a crappy thing that can happen with being in relationship with a woman sometimes. If she's overthinking everything, she's kind of built this whole case against you.
okay, yeah.
And the first time you even knew something was wrong was when she came to have a big talk with you. And in like the span of, right, if I had held that for 3 days, then when it came back to have the big talk, I would have really had a lot to say, but he's having his first moment knowing I'm mad.
Yeah.
So me finally now being able to get mad in the moment, even if it's messy, and I'm not even controlling anyone. I'm honestly like, I could be wrong right now. I have not thought about my emotional response at all. You could be right. I could be being unfair. I don't know. It's such a gift to your male partner, because it's like, oh, we're in the same space for 1 minute. You're
Mm-hmm.
surprised. My feelings are hurt. No one really knows what happened.
Mm-hmm.
They get to be your equal in solving it. You didn't take on all the burden of solving the whole thing and delivering them the narrative. So, yeah, it's not how I imagined an embodied relationship. I don't know if it's always represented as messy as it really is, like on Instagram, maybe, or on like manifestation kind of things, right?
God, the Instagram.
Yeah.
Oh, messy. It's so messy. But messy is beautiful because it's human.
It's human, yeah.
We're human, right? We're human. And the more that we can allow and hold ourselves in our messiness, that's when you start to touch your divinity, because we're also divine, but we can't be divine. It's, again, everything being a cognitive analytical kind of exercise. That's not living. And you mentioned something that's so important for everyone to really, really, really understand, is that this is it. Like this is it. You've got your body, you've got this moment, right? And whatever that is, those are the guarantees that you have.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be gone. Oh my gosh, like how do we start living? And yeah, it's got to be like a whole body experience.
It does. Yeah. You're so much more successful in relationship with a man. If I don't know the answer and I just show up like I feel a little anxious right now, I don't know why, then I actually need you, right? I actually need your help as my partner. And then I actually get to know if you're someone who can let me need them. And I actually get to build connection with you, because I don't know why I feel this way. So, my last question, though, is this. So, you've been married now for how long?
8 years.
8 years. Okay. And you have 2 kids, right? Okay. And you have a part of your job life that's a little, more dry, and you guys have a
Yes.
house, and you have all the things, and you've been through COVID in the past 8 years. Economy is like complicated. Bread costs $7. Your life container's not sexy.
Nope.
And nope. So how do you, when things inevitably feel like your life container, which is not sexy, being a roommate, sharing a house is not like the grounds for sex like connection with little kids, what are the things that you do to change that energy?
Sometimes I don't try to change it. I try to just be with it, right? And the reason why I say that, because part of the work that I do for myself is living with my cycle, and coming from that place of where am I at in my menstrual cycle, and what do I have capacity to bring, and where do I want to be at the different kind of points. And sometimes, based on where I might be at, sometimes I gotta just sit with some discomfort and sit with things the way they are because I can't. I'm not going to come out here and try to change it. I'm just going to allow some space for the way things are and see if I can feel some safety and security in just being with the way things are and
Yeah.
just being in it, right?
This is just what it is right
This
now.
is just going to be what it is right now. And, of course, making sure that my kids are cared for and they understand what's going on. We have an open dialogue about those things. So it's really always first trying to make your, like, I'm checking in with where I'm at and what can I bring? Like, what
Right.
can I bring? Sometimes if I'm at a place in my cycle where I can take it, I'll do a movement practice and get some, like, maybe some sexy vibes on
Yeah.
and give myself even like 10 minutes
Yeah.
to just have an exercise, or I'll need a quick kind of ritual or something where, again, it comes back to that I got to check myself first in making sure that I understand what I'm bringing to this energetic container and what I have capacity to bring in order to maybe lift it up. And maybe, again, maybe that means sometimes we're going to be in some shit for a little while and it
Yeah.
might be a little ugly, but we're all going to be safe and we're all going to be secure in that. And because we know that we're going to bring it up at another time. So yeah, I guess it really, it depends on where I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And well, it's that back to that hallmark of why when you're dating someone, you should probably make sure that both of you are safe to take space or safe for things to be weird for a few days. It doesn't
Yeah,
cause
yeah,
a panic attack if you
yeah,
have a bad
yeah.
week. I think that like the most unsafe thing either partner can do in dating is every time there's a disagreement or someone doesn't like something to say, oh, well, I don't know if I have capacity for this relationship, or I don't know if this is going to work for me. So I think what you're also talking about is like, as it relates to passion, there's safety and space. Okay, well, right
Safety,
now
yeah.
there's space in like this in our sex life, or in not just sex. I don't really just mean that. I mean, that like kind of more romantic passion connection. Sometimes there's space from that, and that's safe.
It's such an important piece because that safety in the space, but away from each other, means that you are safe within yourself.
Yes.
And so that all of it has to come from all of it
It's
has to come
all,
from
it's, yes, it's like you can't do it as a woman. As a woman, you're going to default to things aren't okay because we're not, because they're not like just like this right now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we're not okay. We're not okay. I lived in that for so long. I know
so
you
long.
did
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
It has so much to do, my lack of personal safety had so much to do with why I shape shifted so much and was
100%.
willing to accept any kind of connection, even if the man relating to me would have been far better served with me setting the connection, like
Yep.
far better served with me being able to hold the energetics. I was so spongy, but it was just because I always wanted to be like this.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It all comes from there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah, that's essentially everything we're talking about. Okay, so Amy, thank you. I think that
Thank
actually this is
you.
super great. I think that any woman listening to this, either considering what's possible in her current relationship, which I am a big believer in,
Yeah.
or I really do think that even like your family of origin, whatever, like you can get to where you retool those relationships. You can invite people to new stages in your life if you get to where you can make an invitation like that. But a women dating too, right? Thinking about like, if I pull off of this like Instagrammed, perfect man who's like some other form of Jesus, very kind of religious role, right? This kind of like perfect man. Into what do women who are embodied and who are really dedicated towards living this certain path, what do their male connections look like, sound like, feel like, what's possible? What does the history of the relationship look like? I love your relationship history because it's
Yeah.
like,
It's
for 10 years,
perfect.
yeah, it's
Like,
so imperfect.
and you can be with the person that you are meant to be with, that person of your dreams, but it's gonna be messy and imperfect. Like
It's
it's
going
gonna
to be
be
imperfect,
messy and
right?
imperfect.
And yeah, there might be a whole like for you two. I like that you never waited. I think you could have ruined it by Oh, he said he doesn't want to get married, but I'm just gonna wait. Neither of you
Go,
did that.
go off and go forth and do your
Yeah.
thing. Do
You
your thing.
fully
You
release.
gotta respond to what you're hearing from someone, right? If they're like,
Yeah.
oh, right, it's like, okay, peace.
Peace.
Like,
Yeah. No matter what you feel or you
I can just feel
psychically,
all the things. I felt
because
all the things. Yeah.
yeah, because what if you had, oh, Amy, when you were talking, I was like, gosh, what if Amy, instead of what she did do for those 5 years, right? Where you and your husband now, you just completely took your own life paths. You did everything you needed to do to get ready to be together. What if instead you were like, he's my soulmate twin flame. I'm going to just wait for him and I'm going to check in with him every few weeks. And you just held in the pattern. You stayed like this no matter what he did, right? He might have still gone off and done his own thing, but you,
Yeah. Yeah.
with your phone and your time and your attention, you just kept your energy on him. You
Yeah.
never had any other experiences with other men or personally or your job. I don't think the relationship would have worked out.
No, and
So,
we recognize that every point at which we separated was a necessary separation to get us to where we are.
yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I love it. I love the whole thing. I love that there's like big breakups that
Oh
like
my gosh. Yeah.
stormy street fights. And it's so human.
It's human. It's
So
human.
human. And that is the landing, not something imaginary that I've never seen, but not
Right.
even in movies, right? Like something,
Right.
some perfect relationship where everybody's always like, oh, like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so human. I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time for
Oh
to
my
today.
gosh, thank you. And thank you for the work that you do. It's
Yeah.
so important, girl.
And your information will be linked below everywhere this is posted. So if you guys want to get in touch with Amy, she is obviously not just skilled in embodiment, but I think you have all the life experiences to really, at so many levels that you talked on today,
Yeah,
to take a woman to where she needs to be because you can really relate to her.
for sure. For sure.
Okay. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, honey. Talk to you soon. Bye.